Okay, we're rolling. We are on the air. How's everybody doing? It's me. I'm hanging out here at my little house on the prairie. Well, on the mountain, actually. It's not on a prairie, but it's on a mountain. So, how are you all doing? Um, Done with that. No, there's no little sip left. Okay, just done with my coffee. And I'm also having a nice little caffeinated beverage to keep myself awake because, I don't know if I told you guys yet, but I'm now 50 years old. Yeah. And although I may look kind of youthful for a 50-year-old, at least, I didn't wreck my health and get drunk all the time and take tons of drugs. And actually, I've been most of my life quite sober and edge. Straight edge. I was a straight edge kid, actually. Um, I took care of my health because I didn't want to fall to pieces by the time I was 50 years old, like many of my counterparts have already started doing. Um, Enough of them are already dead, and it's my intention to stay around for a very long time still. I don't think 50 years old necessarily has to even be middle age. I think a person can live well into their hundreds, especially in the 21st century. And so that is my intention. So, really, at this point, I still personally consider myself to be, you know, a young adult, sort of a young post adolescent, because, it does take, it used to be that you were still an adolescent until you were like 25, even 30. But that was like 20 years ago, maybe more, 30 years ago. I think things have significantly changed. And those of us who have kind of kept abreast of the times and seen the changes and the way things have gone understand that 50 is really still quite young. So here I am, a youthful 50-year-old man, sitting in my house, still a new house to me anyway. I mean, the house is younger than I am, but I've been I've had this house for like a year now, so I'm still kind of getting used to it. Actually, I'm moving in really and just getting organized, and I've still got stuff in boxes, trying to figure out what to do with it. And I've been going through boxes and boxes of work that I have from my life in music and production and writing and photography and what else? Other things that visual art, other things that I've worked on, movies, videos, um, independent film stuff that I've done, and trying to figure out what to do with all of it. There's so much, and what I've been doing is taking the best parts and putting it all out on the internet via streaming platforms for you all to check out. Um, that's mostly just the music so far, because there is literally so much music that I couldn't possibly um, I don't think I'm ever gonna get to all of it. Frankly, I think that's gonna be an ongoing thing after I'm dead or something, and like they can rummage through my leftover possessions that haven't been disseminated to the public and still keep putting stuff out. Um, that I suppose will be a job for my kids to do. They can have that work if they so choose, but it will certainly be theirs to own. Um, but yeah, so I've been putting out like the best stuff, and we have some newly available and indeed new stuff that we just finished. Um, there's a new album called X, it's X in brackets like that, Young Astronauts Club, featuring myself, featuring Crystal, featuring a whole bunch of other musicians and singers, and it's really good stuff. It's like our best album so far, I think. The best song on it is called Heartbreak Highway, which I think will be a big hit for years to come, probably. Um, we're going to be doing a lot to promote that. I'm not sure if I mentioned that already, but I might have mentioned it in a video I just did prior to this. But um, but again, you can look forward to that because it's probably going to be happening. We're going to be promoting the song Heartbreak Highway, and it's a little kind of you know pop. Really, it's a pop song. It's not like a lot of prior Young Astronauts Club music, and I think a big part of that had to do with the fact that it was basically written by Crystal. Um, I had very little to do with it other than kind of the production aspect, the sounds that were used, and um, the style of it. And that's really it. But it was her writing, her song, her composition, and basically she was the main producer. So we've been doing a lot of stuff like that lately and going back over stuff that we've already done and trying to figure out how to present it properly because a lot of it was never completely finished. And um, we're still working on finishing it. So I think you will like this new song. Um, I'm going to post a link to it right here. Let's see in the live chat so you can check it out. Um, let me try to find that first. It's in my bookmarks here. Hmm. But yeah, it's really good stuff. Um, it's a little. It might be a little kind of a shock to hear initially for people who are familiar with the music of Young Astronauts Club. But when you actually, and if you've never heard us, it doesn't matter. But if you've heard us before, um, it will take a bit of time to kind of process that this is what we're doing now because it is significantly different to previous stuff. But it still is obviously Young going in a different direction. Okay, here's a link to it right here. There you go. Check that out when you have some time. And I think you'll dig it. I do. And it does have meaning, but I think that we and I are going to leave it to you to kind of make it whatever you want it to be about. Um, think it's best that way rather than trying to sort of tell you what it's about because um, I think that can kind of take away from people's experience with listening to music. So I don't want to do that to you, and we don't want to do that to you. We want you to enjoy it and appreciate it and give it your own meaning because um, whatever it means to you is what it means. You know, I don't I don't think when we write music or lyrics, any of us that do that are necessarily even writing for ourselves. We could be writing for somebody else out there who the song may have more meaning to and may be more important to than we ourselves who wrote the thing. So um, maybe that's really what if somebody else has a meaning that they ascribe to it, then that's what it's really about in the grand scheme of things. So sort of like that. I don't want to take that away from you, and neither does Crystal. So we've talked about that. So it's gonna stay that way. Um, I know it has a certain meaning to me, and it does to Crystal also, but it's yours now. So here you go. There's your song. Um, we hope you like it as much as we do and appreciate it as much as we do, because ultimately, as a writer, not being the writer of the song, but ultimately as a writer, it is something that's given to you for a purpose rather than something you have necessarily um, a an ability to determine what it is or where it necessarily comes from. Oh, look, it's Jacob. Hi, Jacob. How are you? Let me do this so I can see what you're saying. Do you know where you are? You're in the jungle, baby. Yeah, that's right. Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games. We got I don't. We got everything you want. I don't know. I was like 12 when that song came out. So, um, Appetite for Destruction. That was one of the first CDs I ever owned in like 1989. I remember getting it, and um, I remember exactly where I was when I got it, who I was with. I remember the ride home, holding it in my. I was on the train in Boston, coming home on the train. I had Appetite for Destruction, and I believe I got another album with it. I can't remember what it was, but they were both cheap. It was like cheap, cheap CD, like $10 CD, brand new CD deal at Newbury Comics in, I believe it was Harvard Square. And I still can't remember what the other album was. It might have been the Beastie Boys actually. I think I had a Guns N' Roses and Beastie Boys album coming home on the train with the then drummer of my band, who was also my friend. We used to just hang out. And I got home, I put it in the CD player. I'd gotten a CD player prior to that, like the Christmas before that, like $100 from Radio Shack or something. Yeah, it might have been licensed to ill. I don't think Paul's Boutique was out yet at that point. I think it had yet to come out. But I remember putting the CD in it when I got home and just cranking it. And before that, I really wasn't into like heavy metal. I wasn't like the hardest kind of stuff I listened to was maybe the Sex Pistols and punk rock kind of stuff. I didn't I didn't like metal. I didn't grow up exposed to much metal because you know it was always kind of taboo um, to the culture that I come from, which is sort of like rooted in Irish Catholicism, but although I was never Catholic, but heavy metal was like the devil's music, and people who listened to that were like messed up. And so I just kind of avoided heavy metal. I didn't even listen to Iron Maiden when they were popular in the 80s. Like they were on, mainstream TV. And that was sort of like the first real mainstream exposure to heavy metal was Iron Maiden. Um, and I didn't get into metal music, and Guns N' Roses was definitely kind of, they were borderline heavy metal, definitely very hard rock, but with like kind of a punk edge to them. So that's kind of what got me into it because I had already been into punk. Yeah, so I got the Guns N' Roses album. I definitely liked the Beastie Boys though because they were punk. They sounded like rap and kind of tongue in cheek metal, but they they quite obviously were, and we know from studying their early recordings that they were a punk band once. And they all had shaved heads and flight jackets and Doc Martens. They were a skinhead band, really. And I never heard of them back then, back at that point. But it was quite obviously very tongue in cheek and punk rock, and it was like satirical. So I liked the Beastie Boys because of that. But yeah, but yeah, the CD, that's when CD came out. It was around when CD started getting popular, and they just sounded so much clearer and crisper than what we were all listening to music on before that, which was um, records and tapes. And so that kind of, yeah, Appetite for Destruction kind of like blew my face off when I first put it in the CD player because it was like, wow, this is just, the sound quality is so good, and it's so like in your face and loud and aggressive, and like um, it's like it was almost like punk rock had come back from the dead into the mainstream again, um, because it wasn't, it hadn't been before that. It was kind of like punk had been dead for a good 10, 12 years already, as far as I could see. And so it was like, oh wow, punk rock kind of came back, but it's still got this like heavy metal thing to it. And so that was kind of the start of something pretty interesting. I can understand why those guys kind of got, you know, went went the way they did and got really big heads about everything and kind of turned into they kind of turned into jerks. I'm not going to use rude words on here, but anybody who knows Guns N' Roses or came in contact with them knows that they kind of turned into jerks towards their audience and other bands and stuff like this. But they did definitely do something very um, important and special in the pantheon of rock music. So they can kind of be forgiven for that, I guess. And Slash is an amazing guitar player. Still, like he really is. That guy can play like nobody's business. So, um, I was never really or exposed to Twisted Sister, but I did actually see Quiet Riot play one time. I went this band I knew from Boston opened for Quiet Riot in, what was it, New London, Connecticut, I believe it was, and I drove all the way down to Connecticut from the Boston area to see them open for Quiet Riot. at this tiny little club, and it was hilarious because the band that opened for them was they were they were called Only Living Witness, and if you know anything about them, if you've heard of them, they were like a really heavy kind of like hardcore band, like post-hardcore, melodic hardcore band, but they were extremely heavy and um, so it was kind of funny that they opened for Quiet Riot. It was pretty hilarious. So I went because it was funny, and it was funny. The juxtaposition of different styles at the show was really funny. Like they Only Living Witness went on, and then they did their thing, which was almost like emo hardcore or something. They were kind of one of the really early bands that did that kind of music. Like, that became so popular in the 2000s, and they had already kind of broken up at that point. But they were sort of like the one of the godfathers of that style of music. And they did their thing, and it was great. And then Quiet Riot came on, and it was just hilariously funny because Only Living Witness is very, very serious, kind of intense, serious music. And Quiet Riot was just hilariously funny. And you had all these like punk hardcore kids watching Quiet Riot, which was hysterically funny. And some of them started like banging their heads like heavy metal kids as a joke. So it was really funny, but it was a fun show. Um, I don't know much about Twisted Sister other than we're not gonna take it. That's all I know about them. and, and they looked like they look like women. Is that politically incorrect to say these days? I don't know. I can't keep up with all that stuff, but they definitely looked like they were trying to be as feminine as possible. But anyway, I don't know. Hi there, Amanda. Welcome. Yeah, I'm just live streaming here. I've got my little yeah, I do like the Dead Kennedys. I'm not gonna lie. Holiday in Cambodia is one of the best songs ever written. Just period. And Trust Your Mechanic is great. I've got some gum here. Everything's good here, Amanda. I hope you're doing well. Also, yeah, I'm just planning on I'm gonna be doing more live streaming, especially because winter is coming up. So I'm gonna, unless I'm in Texas, which I'm not right now, I'm gonna have to spend more time indoors anyway. So I'm gonna be on here a lot more, I think, just because of needing something to do while I'm inside. Because most of where I spend my time is, in the more northern places. Even even my place in California is up north where it does get cold, and I can go skiing. So hi there, Trapligo. Did I say your name right? I hope I did. It's you're saying, are you the guy that were saying that you would be the future president of the U.S.? It's not that simple, but I did say that I had been exposed to advanced technologies as a child, which led me to see a specific outcome of events that have yet to happen because of what is called quantum displacement, which is translated into plain English is time travel. So I had been quantumly displaced, that's a term, to somewhere in the 2080s and had seen the history record of that time in that particular timeline. I don't know if this is still that timeline, it might be slightly different. It seems like it might be, thankfully. And I had seen that I had become president of the United States myself. And I don't know if that's still going to happen. I don't believe that it will happen in 2024. But, you know, this is America, folks. Anything can happen. It's a very strange political system sometimes, and we don't necessarily understand all of the inner workings of it. I have a law degree, and I still don't understand everything about our electoral system. There's a lot to learn. There are many nuances and exceptions and things that can happen and should happen that don't happen that should. There's all kinds of stuff in electoral politics, and as far as I can see, anyone can be made into the president of the United States, even at the very last minute. So one never knows if I will be in 2024. It's certainly more possible that that could happen in 2028. But as I said, this timeline, I really don't know what's going to happen in it. I just hope that it's positive, more positive than the one that I had seen, which was a timeline where a gigantic nuclear war had happened and America had to be sort of rebuilt from the ground up on a certain level, and I was part of helping to make that happen, I believe. So yeah, that's who I am. Um, yeah, kid home from school, cool. I homeschool my kids. My wife and I homeschool them with a program from Pennsylvania that uh, is effectively self. They do it themselves. I mean, we guide them and show them the overall pattern of things. Well, my wife does more of that than I do, but most of that actually. But yeah, my kids are homeschooled, and I believe that because of it, they're getting a better education than if they went to any institute of learning. So we're going to keep doing that. Have you ever thought of homeschooling, Amanda? It might be a good option for you or for your child. Um, I don't know what the laws are where you are. Are you? You're in Pennsylvania, if I recall, right? That has a pretty good, I believe, has a good homeschool, uh, good set of legislation regarding homeschool. My wife was homeschooled in Pennsylvania, actually. Mm. Yeah, Jacob, we could do a show for sure if you'd like. Just let me know whenever you want to, and I can come on, assuming I'm awake, and it'll be much easier for me coming up because I'm going to have a lot more flexibility, uh, especially as the winter is fast approaching. I'm going to have probably less to do than I do now, which is nice. And we don't have to talk about politics. Personally, I'm not really. I've always said I'm not really political. Um, so it's sort of interesting to me that I would even be considered for uh, something like the job of president of the United States. It doesn't make sense to me, frankly, because I'm not political and I'm not a politician. I've never been in politics. The closest I've gotten to anything political is um, that I was a union carpenter in my 20s in Boston, and that had some political edge to it, but it wasn't really. What I did was not political. I did some sort of like a week or two. One time I did some like picketing work where we had to go and ironically we were picketing Berkeley School of Music because they hired non-union contractors. Um, yeah, we can. I mean, we can talk about what's going on in the world and kind of. I'm sure we can put our heads together and figure out that it still doesn't make any sense. And frankly, like anything with the way it's this system, anything with these systems in place is not really going to make perfect sense anyway because um, it's just not going to. The only way that it will make sense is if uh, these systems of governance that currently exist are ultimately replaced by something that is more sensible, that starts from common sense. And we don't have that much of anywhere at this point. Some place on the planet. I mean, definitely definitely America, the United States of America has an edge and an advantage on the rest of the world because, and I suppose the UK does as well on some level because these are countries that have been around for just around for longer than everyone else. So certain things that we do and certain ways that we view things make a lot more sense just simply because of um, being around longer than everybody else. But the rest of the world is not necessarily that far behind. And in fact, certain other countries are ahead in other ways, and especially ones that have sort of borrowed ideas from British common law and American republic slash democratic ideals. So the whole world is kind of in the same boat ultimately, and we kind of have to figure out still how humanity is going to move forward and survive. And I think maybe it was well intentioned with the formation of the United Nations, first the League of Nations, but I think that's for a limited time only and serves a limited purpose and will still accomplish certain things that need to be done, but ultimately there needs to be something else additionally later on that will ultimately show us the way as a human species and as a planet, planetary civilization. Um, I don't think, there are glimpses of that, but it isn't here. It doesn't completely exist yet. So, but maybe that's going to be around sooner than we think. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I would prefer sooner, but whenever it happens is whenever it happens, really. But yeah, so you probably wondered what that flashing light stuff is. I have one of these things in front of my camera because I just think it looks cool. It reminds me of I'm not sure what it reminds me of. Maybe a Jefferson airplane video or something. So, well, now that I'm wide awake from all that caffeine, let's see. Jacob says, "Do you think there is a specific parallel Earth that we are encountering on some time travel missions or different ones?" Um, I don't think so. I think that it's all the same. It's on the same sort of plane, if you will, same three di- three dimensions. But time is funny. The time is like a fourth dimension. If you study quantum physics, like I have, you can kind of come to understand that time really is like another dimension, and it isn't as straightforward as the first three. It's like you have length, width, and height, and they're all sort of definitive points in the universe. But the fourth dimension has it's malleable and it's sort of hmm, while it's linear, it can also have overlap, and certain points can exist simultaneously and be. It's almost like if I give you an example. Okay, this is my phone charger, right? My phone cord. This is time, but also this is time. So though it is the line ultimately, you have things touching each other, points touching each other, and so they're existing effectively in the same space, the same three dimensions, the same first three dimensions. But they don't necessarily all meet at the same time, you see, or at the same place, because this is over here, and this is here, and this is here. It's sort of like that. Time is almost like a bowl of spaghetti, like a big long bowl of spaghetti. Like that's one spaghetti, and it could all be at the same time, or it can all be at different times. This is why you don't want to necessarily time travel to a location where there are physical objects that would cause you harm. Like, for instance, if you travel to a location where there, say, used to be a building, or will be a building, um, you could be fused into that building and not be able to get out of it. Like what happened with, if you guys know about the Philadelphia experiment, where soldiers were transported, and they literally were transported inside a ship. You can see recreation of that in movies and stuff. That I believe that actually happened. Um, trying to grasp my head around the fact that sometimes travelers could go back to the same event, see it in multiple different ways without a significant time in between. Yeah, um, yeah. I don't know how those guys are doing that. That's maybe they are chronovising or something. I don't really know. Some people have that ability. You wouldn't necessarily want to do it all the time, but you can actually look back into time. You can look forward into time, and you can see different ways that things could have turned out, or different ways that things might turn out. So, like I said, I don't really know what timeline what I saw was actually on. It could be this timeline. It might not be. I really don't know. Hmm. Do you mean parallel in the sense that it's the same three dimension Earth, but with a different fourth dimension outcome? That might we might just be using different terminology or different language, but um, that would make more sense to me. But not necessarily a whole other Earth or universe. Those like that could exist, so to speak, concurrently with other outcomes or happenings if you're able to alter the past somehow. I don't think it's wise to really alter the past. I think it's better just to leave it the way it was and perhaps just learn from it like a history lesson. And I don't think it's that wise to try to alter the future too much either, unless it's really, really, really necessary on some level. Because I think if you can time travel, quantum displace, uh, trying to change the future by changing an event or altering events is quite likely to make things worse on a certain level. Like, for instance, what would happen if you went back in time? Well, say, okay, say in 50 years, some dictator comes around like Hitler and tries to kill lots of people and tries to do something. Um, would the further future be better or worse if you tried to prevent that person from achieving what they were going to achieve? I think the chances are that it will be worse, um, unless it's absolutely necessary. But I don't know. These are all theories, I suppose, theoretical thinking. As you can see, I've had a lot of time to think about this stuff, and have been exposed to the technology that enables people to do this stuff. I'm not as experienced as a lot of people probably are, but definitely have some. Let's just leave it at that. Um, I don't know that it will ever be made public, at least publicly available, because I don't believe that we live in a world where sort of willy nilly access to advanced technology is safe or practical. Um, I would assume that if it even becomes disclosed to the general public that this stuff exists by, say, the United States government, um, that it would be heavily regulated, heavily scrutinized, heavily controlled. You would have to basically take the equivalent of a college degree learning before being allowed to be involved in it. It would likely come with some great expense involved, and I just don't see that it's even going to be acknowledged by any government anytime soon. But we'll see what happens, I guess. Yeah, chronovision is certainly interesting because we could learn a lot about history, how it actually happened by chronovising rather than what we've been told. Because let's face it, a lot of what we've been told about history is just simply not true, surely, if you actually do the research. There's a lot of stuff that's taught in schools and stuff that's effectively propaganda. So, you want to know the real truth. Um, I've heard that some people have used chronovision to witness the life of Jesus Christ, for instance, and death of Jesus Christ. And I'm sure that was helpful for them, although I've never done that. I do, I do still believe in Jesus Christ and that he walked on the earth and he lived and died and was the Son of God and still is the Son of God. But um, other people, I'm sure, did not believe that before having used chronovision to see what happened back then. But to me, it just makes sense. I mean, look, they named time after the guy. Before Christ, after Christ, Anno Domini, after. Right. So they named time after Jesus. So why would you doubt that he was a significant figure? I don't even know what the Illuminati is, Jacob. To me, it just seems like a term that people throw around very loosely anymore and ascribe to anybody that claims to have some sort of knowledge about something. It's like you know, humanity is effectively Illuminati at this point compared to how enlightened people were a few hundred years ago. So maybe we all are the Illuminati and we just don't know it. Hmm. Yeah, I'm sure that. Yeah, I don't think people doubt that Christ existed or whatever. But I think if you could see what he did with his life, it might be convincing um, regarding who he claimed he was. So I certainly believe that Jesus was the Son of God, and I think the fact that there are four books written by completely separate people that agree with each other on all important accounts of this man's life, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, um, give just the fact of those books alone give enough credence to him being who he said he was, or people said he was. So I definitely believe in Jesus Christ. I don't think it's a subject for debate, for argument, and I'd be silly to say that I could explain that to be true in a live stream on YouTube. But I would encourage anyone to keep searching and to keep learning about him, because the more you do, the more it becomes evident. But yeah, like for instance, the prophecies in the rest of the Bible, there are about 300 prophecies regarding the life of Jesus Christ, and he fulfilled every single one of them. Now, these were all written before he was even born, so it's sort of like 300 prophecies. It's sort of crazy to think that if someone if there were a collection of writings that existed before this man was born, and that he was born and fulfilled every single one of them in 33 years of his life. What does that tell you? I mean, 300 prophecies. That's just the odds of that happening are slim to none. So, but yeah, if you want, I could send you information about that. I know places to find it. You can likely find that just by using Google. So look up about the 300 prophecies regarding the life of Jesus Christ, and it's an amazing read. It'll take you some time to read through all that, and it would take me hours to talk about it here. So I'm not going to take up the whole lot, or take up hours of the live stream to talk about 300 prophecies. But unless you guys want me to, I mean, I could sit here all night talking about prophecies of Jesus. Like for instance, I believe that's I'm just going to go into Google here. Prophecies of Jesus' life. All right, Google is taking its time to load here. Actually, some people will say there are more. There's like 351, so I knew it was about 300 or 300. Mm. There are so many. I mean, where do you begin? And they're all very, very specific and not vague whatsoever, which is, not like looking at a prophecy of Nostradamus or something, which is often very vague and could be ascribed to anything. So I think it's a fruitless effort to discuss religion with people if I think it's going to go extinct. I don't know. I don't think the Bible is religion. I think it's something other. And this is the mistake that people often make, is that they equate the Bible with religion, which religion is a man-made institution. And I do believe that will go extinct. In fact, I believe that human governments will inevitably turn on and abolish organized religion. That's going to happen. Like I, that is inevitable. But I don't think the Bible has anything to do with religion. I think it's a completely separate thing, and it's a mistake to assume that because religion claims to represent something, that that something is therefore synonymous with religion, because that's a lie. That's effectively a lie. Um, the churches don't represent the Bible. They don't represent a loving God. The Bible says God is love, right? The Bible shows us that God is a loving, creative being who gave us life and gave us this earth and gave us, the ability to enjoy our existence. And the churches have done the complete opposite throughout history. They've created wars, they've created suffering, they've created poverty, they've created conflict, strife, sectarianism, nationalism. They've created every other problem. It's all been created by religion. So I think it's grossly insulting to the Bible and the God of the Bible what they've done in that God's name. And I think it's definitely a mistake to assume that they are correct and that they're telling the truth in their claim that they represent that God. It's almost like saying that because Donald Trump says he's a Republican, that he's a Republican. He says he's a Republican, but that doesn't mean he's a Republican. So, and the same goes for Barack Obama, who says he is a Democrat. I don't believe he was a very typical Democrat. So, um, it's the same thing with religion. It doesn't really represent the God of the Bible. So, I definitely, I know for a fact that it's a mistake because I did that when I was a kid. When I was in my teens, for instance, I became very disaffected by religion. Any religion that I had been exposed to, disaffected with religion, became very unreligious and non-religious. And but I didn't have any education in the Bible, although I had read it, had been reading it, and so I started reading and studying it with some friends who were already knowledgeable of it, and their parents had, their friends and parents had shown it, taught them about it. So I figured they knew what they were doing, and I was right. They showed it. They showed me what it said in there and taught me what it said in there, and it turned out that it was, I found out that it was completely different than the God that I had been told about, and been told that these organizations represented. So it was definitely a mistake. And in my early 20s, I completely realized that that was just a total lie, early to mid 20s in my life, really, because from that point onward, it became very clear to me, anyway, that religion and the Bible were not synonymous, and people were being lied to. But how do you explain that to people? It's hard to explain that to people. You can't just go around telling people they're being lied to. They're going to have to want to understand that themselves. Um, so I did kind of freak out a little bit at first when I figured that out. I definitely, um, because it's a pretty serious thing to figure out. I kind of went off the deep end a little bit and was a little um, aggressive, to say the least, in my assertion of that belief to people I knew. And but that happens, that happens to people. When you learn something, sometimes you can get really excited about sharing it with others, and when they don't hear it, you can become, or they don't want to hear it. It can be very frustrating. So that's what happened to me. But as I've gotten older, I've kind of come to the realization that people aren't going to hear it unless they want to. So mm. Yeah, there's a lot of common belief between different religions. Like, for instance, Christendom, Judaism, and Islam all believe in the Old Testament. So why would there be fighting or hostility between any of these groups? I don't understand. But that's because I'm not part of any of them. So, although I do consider myself to be Christian, but not part of Christendom. That's another thing I get sort of confusion about with other people, is because people say they're Christian, but I don't necessarily believe that they are, just because they're part of Christendom, which is a distinctly different thing, and is, in my belief, incorrectly named Christianity. Like I just said, I think what Christendom has done is sort of misrepresent Christianity or the God of the Bible. So, hmm. Yeah, there's the flood. Have you heard of a guy named Ron Wyatt, for instance? He You can watch movies about him. He died a while ago, but his life was in biblical archaeology, and what he did was use the Bible to make all of these great archaeological finds. And one of them was, in fact, Noah's Ark. He found Noah's Ark on a mountain in Turkey near Mount Ararat, the Ararat mountain range, I believe, or the range of mountains where Ararat is. And as I'm sure you know, Turkey is a predominantly Muslim country. So, there's the evidence right there for Islamic people to go take a look at if they want. It's in a mountain in Turkey. And it's exactly where the Bible said it would be. So, there's that. He also found the remnants of Sodom and Gomorrah, where the Bible says that brimstone or fire came down from heaven and burned the city. And that location is still there. You can see that there are balls of sulfur in the ground where how would they have gotten there other than if they were rained down from the sky somehow? I definitely think there is intelligent life elsewhere in the universe, and it is paying attention to what we are doing down here on Earth. But I don't think that just because it's intelligent life from elsewhere visiting this planet or even living on this planet that it's God. I think God is far superior to other intelligent life and other species than our own. But yeah, I do definitely believe in intelligent life other than human beings. The universe is just so huge. How could there be? It just seems improbable that there isn't. And in my belief, I've encountered some of it while it's been visiting this Earth. So, hmm. Yeah, I've explored that idea also, Jacob. When I was a teenager, I used to think that maybe the Bible was written by space aliens and people were just kind of writing things down that they experienced in a way that they understood. But that is a theory that came from, I believe, the writings of a man named Zechariah Stitchin. And um, the more you kind of explore the writings of the Bible itself, the more you see that that is just sort of that's kind of lazy thinking, really, honestly. And I'm not trying to insult anybody. That's not my intent here. But um, if you if you really explore the writings of the Bible itself, you do come to see that they're far greater than just sort of primitive humans trying to explain something that they didn't fully understand. It's not really like that. And I don't think Zechariah Stitchin was a very good student of the Bible. I think he was perhaps I don't know anything about his background, but I think perhaps he was probably just a science fiction writer who was looking to explore ideas in writing rather than an investigator of the scriptures, which I am, I have been, and having done that, I can definitely say that I don't believe Stitchin was very educated in the Bible. He may have been a great writer, great science fiction writer like L. Ron Hubbard or something, but hmm. um, I don't know if those are biblical texts that are describing battles in the sky. Let's see the what is it, the Mahabharata? That's not part of the Bible. That's something else. That's a sounds like an Indian writing. I've never read it, but it sounds like it came from there, and it's not in the Bible. Mm. Oh yeah, Eric von Daniken. Also, I've yeah, I've explored his theories too, and Chariots of the Gods, right? Isn't that one of his books or his famous book there? Yeah, it doesn't seem to be that he was a really good student of the Bible. Seems like he was a science fiction writer also, or just kind of exploring some theory that he discovered somewhere. You know, a lot of the a lot of these guys also, I don't necessarily even think that they came up with these ideas themselves. I'm sure it was something that was given to them, and they had the free time to kind of explore it in fictional writing. That's what I would presume, but again, I don't really know. It's like we're finding out now that Albert Einstein didn't even come up with a lot of the stuff he was credited with. It was his wife. So, um, and I would like to say that it's probably true also about me. That I credited with things that my wife came up with because we just put them out under both of our names, and people tend to think it's the man for some reason that comes up with stuff. But a lot of time it's also, or even the woman in a marriage who comes up with things. So once again, the women's lib movement does have a point. But I hope that changes. I do hope that women are more respected and appreciated in the future for their contributions to this world, and that not, it seems absurd in 2024 that only men get credit for everything still. It's kind of ridiculous, actually. Mm, I don't know. I mean, I think feminism is going to be around, maybe not as extreme as it's gotten lately, but I think that the underlying principle of the fact that women are historically oppressed and not given their fair share of things when historically women are doing an awful lot more work than they get credit for. And I think that's changing. I think if you look at the fact that we do have a female presidential candidate finally in the United States, she is the vice president. So that says something. It is moving forward. Um, yeah, as Henry Rollins said to me recently, he said he's looking forward to President um, okay, AOC, which you know I do think there needs to be more feminism. Frankly, I don't think women get enough credit for things and are quite capable of more than they are allowed by society. Still, but you know, accomplishments. Yeah. Well, the media will always still try to promote male dominance of things. It still does, and I don't don't think that's necessarily a good thing. Honestly, I think women deserve to have more credit for things and should be allowed to have a greater part in the way the world works. And I think it would be a better place. I think there's imbalance in terms of male and female participation and creation of society. I think there's a gross imbalance, and that men have much more of a share in the way things are than they should. Yeah, I agree that merit is obviously a part of it, but I don't think that merit is necessarily recognized either. I don't think it's given its proper credit. I don't think, you know, I think a lot of people who have no merit get credit for a lot of things that um, they didn't do. And there's a lot of people who did a lot who get no credit whatsoever. So you can't really say that we have a meritocracy. It just doesn't exist. It's you know, if we can create a meritocracy, that would be fantastic. But until that actually happens, we sort of need to figure out where the imbalance lies and try to adjust ourselves accordingly. I don't think that's completely the solution, but we do need to certainly work towards the creation of a meritocracy for sure. You know, I mean, a lot of women are better at more than just what they're sort of committed still to do by society, and a lot of men get a lot of credit for things that they didn't do at all. You know, and if you're a man that recognizes that fact and you point it out, you also get maligned and misrepresented and mistreated and get no credit for things, and you get labeled as something that you're not. It's just you know. But if you're a smart man, then you recognize, like, you should recognize these things. So I try to be a smart man, and I try to recognize these things, even when I'm being gaslighted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to think otherwise. I'm grateful for what my wife does and other women do, and I think their roles in the way things actually turn out are far more important than they frequently get credit for. So, so yeah. Okay, so I've been on here for an hour and 19 minutes. This is kind of long for me. I'm not going to be doing like 4 hour live streams at all because I'm gonna. I would need to drink a lot of caffeine, like a lot of caffeine. I can't sit here for 4 hours and do this. It's a little too much for me. So I'm gonna be doing like an hour something and take a break and maybe come back later, that kind of thing. So it's been an hour 20 minutes. It's been nice talking with you and everybody else who came in. And please give my regards to your significant other. And don't forget to thank her for everything that she does because, you know, we should never take women for granted. And that's part of how I think things are going to change in the future is that men just will no longer be permitted to take the contributions of women in society for granted and will be expected to say thank you and show appreciation. Have a good one yourself, Jacob, and we will talk soon, I hope. Take care now.